Chapter 81. Wang Pushi glanced at the pouch of spiritual stones. Commander, this is far too valuable. His Bodhi brew was not even a tenth of the pouch's value. Gu Yenying had clearly called him over to give him these spiritual stones. He was unable to express his gratitude with words. If I tell you to keep it, then keep it. It's not like I lack these spiritual stones. As Gu Yenying said that, she said to Hua Sengzan, Little Hua, what you lack right now isn't spiritual stones. Don't just let others use the time they spend on bullying children on cultivation. You should stop fooling around and spend more time on cultivation. Out of the 18 commanders under me, only you're still a chi practitioner. You have to understand that if you can't undergo the heavenly tribulation and establish a foundation, you'll still be mortal in the end. Li Qingshan thought, it's no wonder that Gu Yenying knew Fengzhang was lying. She sat there, but she heard everything that happened in the city. And, in the eyes of regular people, she truly was a godlike figure. Hua Sengzan giggled. Yes, Boss Gu, I'll definitely risk my life to cultivate. Only in the end did Gu Yenying say to Li Qingshan, Little bro Qingshan, I'll give you this map, and I'll give you a word of advice. The Green Province spans 15,000 kilometers, but the Jianghu is only a corner. With that, she took off, her wide sleeves ruffling in the wind like a hawk spreading its wings. Before Li Qingshan could even return to his senses, the figure in snow white had already vanished into the horizon. As it turned out, it really could fly. He repeated the words Gu Yenying had left behind. He understood that if he remained in Qingyang City, he probably would not have the opportunity to meet her again in this life. In the cold of winter, Fengzhang was drenched in sweat, like he had just been fished out of water. He felt like he had just been freed from a great burden, so he sucked in a deep breath. Wang Pushi's expression regained its grimness, and he immediately exuded a powerful pressure. Li Qingshan suddenly realized that the person in front of him was also an extraordinary and terrifying person. Under the radiance of Gu Yenying, he seemed like an ordinary old man next door. However, as soon as Gu Yenying left, that terrifying aura that was like a mountain fire pressed down on him. Li Qingshan instinctively felt fear and danger, as if an axe was right in front of him, about to fall in the next moment. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. No matter how the aura pressured him, he did not move at all. Under the enormous pressure, his iron bones seemed to be clanking. Fengzhang knelt on the ground with a thud. Wang Pushi turned his head away. He simply didn't want to take another look at Fengzhang's ugly state. Compared to Li Qingshan, the difference was like heaven and earth. Leave behind the wolf tablet and piss off. If he were here and encountered something like this, he would punish Fengzhang at most, but he really could not afford to lose face like this in front of Gu Yenying. He was truly furious inside. This bastard was actually bold enough to lie to her with words that did not know what was good for him. Gu Yenying did not say anything directly, nor did she seem angry at all. However, she had decided Fengzhang's fate with just a few casual words. Commander! Fengzhang wailed out like he had been struck by lightning. When Li Qingshan heard that, he also felt like a bird mourns when it was about to die. He thought, I'm just telling you to resign. Why do you sound like your parents have died? That's not how a man should act. Little did he know what this meant to Fengzhang, nor did he understand the difficulty of joining the Hawkwolf Guard. The various cultivation methods that were difficult to come across in the Jianghu could be freely read in the library of the Hawkwolf Guard. No matter where he went, even people stronger than him would treat him politely. The entire clan was honored because of his identity. Once he was stripped of this identity, he would just be a so-called innate master in the Jianghu. However, Wang Pushi was renowned for his heart of stone. He would never go back on his word. If he persisted, he might even end up getting himself killed. Feng Zhang placed the wolf tablet on the table with trembling hands and glanced back at Li Qingshan. What kind of gaze was that? It was filled with resentment, as if he wanted to flay him alive and devour his bones. If regular people received a gaze like that, they would feel uneasy for several months. But who was Li Qingshan? He glared back fearlessly. After going through so much, his willpower had become unyielding a long time ago. It was no longer the same as before. In the end, Feng Zhang shifted his gaze first and left in a hurry. Wang Puxi said, "Put it away." Li Qingshan went up and stowed the map of the Green Province away. It was precious and precious. Although it could not be used for cultivation or killing enemies, it was the best tool for broadening the mind of a man. It allowed him to understand how vast the world was and how insignificant he was. However, no matter how insignificant he was, there would be a day when he would prove that a frog would not remain a frog forever. He would definitely leap out of this well, unfold his wings, and fly into the 9 heavens to pursue that unreachable figure. Not only did this experience fail to crush his confidence, but it instead strengthened his resolve and strengthened his heart, allowing him to set an even greater goal. Hua Sungzan smiled to one side. However, inside, he only thought, the ignorant are fearless. There will be a day when you understand just how great the distance between you and her is. It's so great that no fortuitous encounters, talent, or hard work can make up for it. No matter how hard you chase after her, you won't be able to take a single step closer. Then there's this. Wang Puxi glanced at the wolf tablet. Li Qingshan was taken aback. He picked up the wolf tablet, and a cool sensation seeped into his palm. He felt refreshed all over. Not only was this item forged from profound ice iron, but it could calm the mind, preventing the wearer from suffering cultivation deviation so easily. It was twice the result with half the effort, and it came with many other wondrous effects. Li Qingshan did not know about this, but he knew this item was impressive. However, everything had happened so quickly that he had no idea how to react. In less than an hour, he had become a hawkwolf guard that the people of the Jianghu feared so much, and this was only because of Gu Yenying's attitude. Wang Puxi stowed the table, stove, and cauldron back into his pouch on his waist. He stood up. "You're not a hawkwolf guard right now. Go report to Zhuozhibwa in Jiaping City." He took out a metal ruler and tossed it into the air. The ruler swelled in the wind and became 3 meters long, hovering in the air. Wang Puxi stepped onto the metal ruler. Hua Sungzan patted Li Qingshan's shoulder and gave him an expression of wishing him luck. He said 2 words, "Run." The metal ruler shot through the air, leaving behind a streak of light. "Oi, old Wang, wait for me." Hua Sungzan crossed several dozen meters in a single step. He stepped onto the metal ruler and vanished into the night sky in the blink of an eye. Before Li Qingshan could even marvel at the abilities of an immortal, he felt a violent wave of murderousness. He saw Feng Zhang's twisted face with a single glance, charging over like a mad dog. He decided to listen to Hua Sungzan for now, and not clash with the maddened Feng Zhang. He used the movement technique of the tiger demon, climbs the mountain, and leapt up the mountain. As soon as he leapt away, a wind blade slid past where he was. The top half of the large, welcoming pine tree slid down slowly, falling to the ground loudly. When Li Qingshan turned around and saw this, he was surprised. This probably was not just because of Feng Zhang, but also because of the wind-entwining blade. The welfare of the Hawkwolf Guard really was impressive. It could not be compared to the inferior spiritual artifacts wielded by first-rate or second-rate people of the Jianghu. Chapter 82. Li Qingshan grabbed the cursive sword calligraphy on his back. After drinking the Bodhi brew, Not only had the true qi in his body completely recovered, but it had also reached an unprecedented peak. It was enough to activate this spirit artifact again, and it would definitely be much more powerful than the wind entwining blade. However, he didn't have absolute confidence that he could kill Feng Zhang in one blow. This spirit artifact of his was probably more than a grade higher than the wind entwining blade. It was a truly precious treasure if he didn't kill his enemy, and word got out it would probably attract not just first-rate experts, but innate experts or qi refinement experts. Moreover, he couldn't control this spirit artifact very well. Once he used it, he would have to use up all the true qi in his body. If he failed, his stamina, strength, and speed would all decrease by more than a level. He could only resign himself to death. Leaden clouds covered the sky again. In the pitch-black night, one chased and the other fled. With his extraordinary eyesight, Li Qingshan leaped continuously through the mountains, specifically looking for rugged areas that were difficult to traverse. He climbed cliffs and leaped over mountain streams, the scenery in front of him constantly flying past him. Feng Zhang chased madly from behind with bloodshot eyes. He also seemed to have night vision, but his eyesight was far inferior to Li Qingshan's, who had shed oxen tears. If they were on flat ground, Feng Zhang might have been able to catch up. However, in the mountains, Li Qingshan's 3 forms of the tiger demon movement technique practically had an additional effect. He was unbelievably fast, and the mountains rose and fell. After a few twists and turns, Li Qingshan could no longer be found. Li Qingshan pulled away and hid in a snowy nest in the shade of a mountain rock like a tiger hunting its prey. He held the cursive sword calligraphy in his hand and even summoned little, and as long as Feng Zhang chased after him, he would go all out. Even if he couldn't kill him, he could at least injure him a little. They were already deep in the mountains, which gave him enough time to buffer. To be able to chase Feng Zhang to death all the way here, it couldn't be said that his calculations weren't deep. A long howl rang out, and Feng Zhang's venomous voice reverberated through the mountains. Li Qingshan, I will definitely skin you alive and hack you into 1,000 pieces. I won't rest until you're dead. The tremors caused the snow on the mountaintop to slide down. Li Qingshan knew that Feng Zhang would not chase after him for the time being. He sighed regretfully. As for those threats, he would not take them to heart. After lying in ambush for a while and confirming that Feng Zhang did not chase after him, he crawled out of the snow nest, shook off the snow on his body, and walked into the depths of the boundless mountains. After obtaining the map, he finally knew the name of the boundless mountains that he had been gazing at for 10 years. Boundless and boundless was boundless. Broad-mindedness was boundless. What a good name. He climbed to the peak and looked at the mountains again. There was no longer any confusion in his heart. He saw a house in the distance. When he rushed over to take a look, he realized that it was not a village, but a dilapidated mountain deity temple. Other than the main hall, most of the walls and houses had collapsed, but it was still a shelter. Although he did not fear the cold, being in a world of ice and snow consumed a lot of his physical strength and Jinchi. With Little An's help, he found a bear's nest. The wild bear was still in hibernation and had not woken up yet. Li Qingshan went up and punched it to death, then carried it back to the mountain deity temple. Because of the different magical powers he practiced, although Little An's 5 senses were not as sharp as Li Qingshan's, he seemed to be extremely sensitive to qi. Even Li Qingshan did not notice the bear's nest under the snow at first. The main hall was empty. There was not even an offering table or a plaque. It must have been taken by the nearby villagers as firewood. However, Li Qingshan found that the mighty mountain deity with a green face and tusks was actually a solid wooden sculpture. It stood intact on the altar, with only traces of the erosion of time. Presumably, The villagers did not dare to blaspheme the mountain deity too much. However, Li Qingshan did not care about this. Right now, he was with demons. Both he and Shaoan practiced the abilities of demons, so there was no need for them to worship ghosts or gods anymore. He went up and smashed the statue to pieces with a few punches and kicks, lighting a fire in the hall. Afterwards, he skinned a huge bear and dismantled its bones. He did not need any weapons at all. With a gentle swipe of his finger, the thick bear skin and flesh were cut open like paper. The bear heart was Little Anne's dinner. The bear skin was spread on the ground, and the bear meat was placed on the bonfire. Speak of the devil. Oxen, whom Li Qingshan had been thinking about, suddenly appeared in front of Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan cursed silently. It was like the police in the movies, always appearing after everything was over. Oxen looked at the statue in the fire and nodded in satisfaction. He asked, "How do you feel today?" Li Qingshan said, "I feel like I don't know anything. I'm being laughed at for no reason. You don't even explain it to me. Even if I really cultivated the 9 oxen and 2 tigers, can I really defeat others? Then what's with the qi refining golden core?" Oxen said, "Isn't what you understand now more profound than what I told you? You will soon understand whether my magical powers are useful or not. As for the qi refining golden core, that's how humans divide them." Li Qingshan said, "Am I not a human?" Oxen smiled without saying anything, causing Li Qingshan to feel a wave of disgust. He grabbed the bear meat and began to chew on it. Many parts of the meat were still half-cooked and had traces of blood on them, but he didn't find it disgusting. Instead, he thought it had a unique flavor. In a short while, he had completely devoured the large bear. He also felt that he was a little inhuman, but there was nothing wrong with being able to eat and drink. After cooking, he exercised and got up to cultivate. He discovered that after drinking a cup of Bodhi brew, his tiger demon bone forging fist was only a layer away from the first realm, but he just couldn't break through. He asked Oxen about the reason, and the result was just as he expected. Ox Demon's fist of great strength was steady and firm, requiring bitter cultivation, while Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist needed to advance through slaughter. Slaughter! Li Qingshan lowered his head and pondered. In the pitch-black mountain range, a bit of light could travel very far. Li Qingshan lay on the bear's skin, holding the cursive sword calligraphy in his hand. He had little and hide and quietly waited for his prey to take the bait. Hearing the sound of footsteps, he suddenly opened his eyes and stepped out of the mountain god temple. He saw that it wasn't just Feng Zhang. There were 5 people beside him: Hallmaster Wu, Wei Dondong, Chu Xin, Lu Tingrui, and Wan Hao, 5 first-rate experts. They had surrounded the mountain god temple to prevent Li Qingshan from escaping. There were also countless figures moving about. They were all disciples of their sections. There was no lack of second-rate experts among them, and the weakest were third-rate. Li Qingshan hadn't expected that waiting for Feng Zhang to take the bait would attract so many people. It seemed that although Feng Zhang was furious, he wasn't an idiot and knew to borrow the strength of others. Chapter 83. Wan Hao and Wei Dondong's complexion became somewhat uneasy. Chu Xin chuckled and said, "There is nothing shameful about doing business." He fiddled with the iron abacus in his hand, making walala sounds. Lu Tingrui drew a glistening, thin sword. "Hand over the spiritual ginseng, and we'll leave immediately." Feng Zhang had told them to come because he promised that everyone would get a share of the spiritual ginseng in Li Qingshan's possession. Although Hall Chief Wu was rather dissatisfied with this, he was not bold enough to say anything when he saw Feng Zhang's darkened face. Li Qingshan said nothing more. He fished out the spiritual ginseng from his gourd and tossed it into his mouth, chewing it up and swallowing it. He clapped his hands. "It's gone." As soon as the eyes of the masters lit up, they dimmed rapidly. Their expressions varied, ranging from despair, fury, or disappointment, but none of them had the will to fight. Li Qingshan's drastic move was sure, accurate, and ruthless. Feng Zhang said, "I have pills that are even more useful than the spiritual ginseng. As long as I take action, I'll definitely grant all of your wishes. However, if anyone doesn't take action, they'll be my mortal enemy from today onwards. I'll take revenge on all of your family members, one by one." The masters all changed in expression. Li Qingshan sneered, "Do you really believe the words of this person who threatens your family at every turn? Why don't we work together and kill him? Let's see if he has pills on him, and we'll split it. He's no longer a Hawkwolf guard anyway, so we don't have to worry about revenge." The masters were all tempted. Feng Zhang drew his wind-entwining blade with a swish. "Who dares to?" Seeing how his forceful threats had the opposite effect, he added, "The pills aren't on me either." If Li Qingshan were a little stronger, it really might have been possible for him to make them defect. However, the masters could clearly tell which of the two of them was easier to kill, so they made their decision. Seeing everyone approach him step by step, Li Qingshan thought, "Will the Wind Snow Mountain Divine Temple come after the Qingyang building is drenched in blood? Perhaps the heavens really were willing, but snowflakes really did drift down from the sky again." He did not plan on fleeing. Although the battle had been difficult, it was an opportunity for him to make a breakthrough in the Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging. Not only did he seek riches in the midst of danger, but he also had to seek magical powers and martial arts in the midst of danger. There were only experts who emerged from battle, not experts who escaped. Great by saber force, Feng Zhang raised his wind-entwining saber and attacked at the same time. Li Qingshan separated his legs and spread his arms. He faced the sky and let out a long roar. However, it was not the voice of a human, but the roar of a ferocious tiger. Roar! The entire spirit ginseng began to take effect in his stomach. True qi surged like the tide and poured into the whistle. He used a move from the Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging that he had never truly used before. Tiger Demon Roar. All the falling snowflakes within 300 feet were swept away. If one looked from above, they would see a hemispherical shape rising from the ground. Feng Zhang was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. His great by-saber aura was instantly disrupted. The 5 experts simultaneously stopped in their tracks and retreated. They felt as if an iron hammer was knocking on their heads. They looked at Li Qingshan in disbelief. They were intimidated by his ferocious aura. Was he really just a first-rate expert? The other second- and third-rate experts were even worse off. They covered their ears and rolled on the ground. 2 streams of blood flowed out of their mouths. Their eardrums had been directly shattered. A few of the weakest were even killed by the roar. The roar of a tiger in the forest caused the beasts to retreat. Li Qingshan was fighting 1 against 100, yet he still had the upper hand. The roar was endless, shaking the entire mountain deity temple. Not a single snowflake could fall. Feng Zhang endured the roar and roared, "What are you all waiting for?" He spun the saber in his hand and sent out another wind blade. Li Qingshan stopped roaring. He did not retreat or evade. He mobilized his true qi and poured it into his palm. His 5 fingers spat out a tiger claw-like aura and ruthlessly grabbed the wind blade. The wind blade shattered and set off a gust of wind. Li Qingshan looked at his palm and saw a faint blood stain. He stuck out his tongue and licked it. He revealed a ferocious smile and arched his body, looking very much like a ferocious tiger in human form. His killing intent burned wildly, and his demonic nature surged. The killing moves of the 5 experts also arrived at the same time. Wei Dondong's long sword, Lu Tingrue's thin sword, Wanhao's steel saber, and Hall Leader Wu's iron fists. Each of their weapons glowed with spiritual light. Even Hall Leader Wu was wearing a spiritual glove. They sealed off all of Li Qingshan's paths of retreat. 18 abacus beads shot over like arrows, completely cutting off Li Qingshan's last chance of survival. Chu Xian also stopped smiling. The 5 experts worked together and killed him in one strike. Feng Zhang did not even need to make a move. Li Qingshan did not care about anything else. He took a step forward and grabbed Wei Dondong's shoulder, risking his life. Before the claw arrived, the roar pierced everyone's ears. Wei Dondong cherished his life so much. How could he be willing to die here? He immediately withdrew his sword and retreated. As soon as he retreated, Li Qingshan advanced, causing Wei Dondong to lose all his courage. The long sword in his hand danced in an airtight manner. He only hoped to delay for a moment so that the others could kill Li Qingshan. A spiritual sword pierced through the air. Little, and who had been hiding all this time, finally showed himself. Seeing that Li Qingshan was in deep danger, he immediately used his strongest sword, Aura, enveloping the 3 of them. Suddenly, a saber severed the sword, Aura. Feng Zhang waved his wind-entwining saber and blocked Little, and Little Anne's eyes burned with blood-red flames as he watched the saber and sword land on Li Qingshan's body. Blood splattered everywhere. In his heart, he wished that he could tear Feng Zhang to pieces. Wanhao's saber landed on Li Qingshan's shoulder, and Lu Tingrue's thin sword stabbed into Li Qingshan's body. Although they were shocked by Little Anne's appearance, they were all first-rate experts. Their wills were incomparably firm, and they were not affected in the slightest. Li Qingshan had long since circulated the true qi in his body. The 2 unstoppable spiritual weapons were not able to cut through Li Qingshan. But even if he had copper skin and iron bones, he was immediately injured. However, he did not care about it at all. He just kept moving forward, not letting go of Wei Dondong. The 18 iron abacus beads landed on Li Qingshan's body, but he was not affected in the slightest. This caused Chu Xian's eyes to widen in disbelief. Hall Master Wu was the most careful. He attacked from behind Li Qingshan. Seeing that Li Qingshan was wide open, he was delighted and punched Li Qingshan's back with all his strength. Li Qingshan thanked him in his heart. "You're the one I'm least afraid of here." He used the force to charge forward. His arms grew, and he grabbed Wei Dondong's shoulders. He tore them apart and roared, "Demonic tiger tearing sheep!" Wei Dondong did not even have the chance to use all his secret techniques before he was torn in half. Blood and organs splattered all over the ground. He was not afraid of a tiger-like opponent, but a pig-like teammate. Li Qingshan killed an expert while being surrounded by 5 experts. He was incomparably ferocious, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Li Qingshan grabbed the 2 pieces of the corpse and threw them at Wanhao and Lu Tingrue. The 2 of them were afraid that they would be injured by Li Qingshan's final counterattack and follow in Wei Dondong's footsteps. They immediately retreated. When experts fought, martial arts were only one part. The more important thing was their aura. The moment the enemy's aura weakened, Li Qingshan's aura became like a river bursting its banks. It could not be controlled. He did not care about the people behind him at all. He charged forward like a mad tiger towards the 2nd and 3rd-rate experts. Chapter 84. The few first-rate experts' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. These disciples were all painstakingly nurtured by them, and many of them were their children. They rushed forward without a care for anything else. Li Qingshan was happily killing, but Wanhao ruthlessly chopped down again. Li Qingshan grabbed a third-rate expert in front of him and used him as a shield. Puchi. Wan Hao did not even frown. He chopped the person in front of him into two and continued to chop at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan took advantage of the sword's momentum to use Tiger Demon leaping over the ravine and pounced at another second-rate expert. A faint sword mark was left on his back as he thought, "This old man is so ruthless." Single-armed blade, why did you kill my disciple? Lu Tingrui was not happy. She ignored Li Qingshan and stabbed at Wan Hao with her sword. The person he killed was her beloved disciple. He was very handsome, and she had always liked him. Wan Hao waved his blade to block the thin sword. He was caught, and there is no way he will live. I am just giving him a quick death. Don't be noisy, woman. Now you are fighting amongst yourselves. You all want to die here? Feng Zhang roared. His blade shone brightly, forcing Little N to retreat. What kind of monster are you? His right hand trembled slightly. Little N was not only skilled in sword techniques, but he was also very powerful. He was very hard to deal with. Little N kill. As Li Qingshan said that, his hand did not slow down at all. With a sharp swish, he reached towards the chest of a second-rate master. His hand was covered in blood, and a brutal aura rose up involuntarily. Before his hand had even arrived, he had already frightened the second-rate master, such that he could not even use half of his full strength. A few abacus beads shot over. Chu Xian attacked again, but this time he did not aim at Li Qingshan's major acupuncture points. Instead, he aimed at his eyes, perineum, and other vital points. Hall Chief Wu threw another punch towards Li Qingshan's back. The punch earlier had failed, so he was just like Lu Hong in the past. He was filled with disbelief, so he tried again without the slightest hesitation. Li Qingshan suddenly stopped, making the abacus beads miss him. He forcefully twisted his feet, and like a vicious tiger turning its head, he turned around and threw a punch through the air. Are you done yet? The fists collided. Leader Wu's arm cracked and flew more than 3 meters away. Before he could get up, a sword light descended from the sky, dazzling his eyes. It turned out that when Little N heard Li Qingshan words, he immediately understood what he meant. He leaped and soared more than 10 meters into the air. He became one with his sword and stabbed at Leader Wu. Hall Leader Wu was greatly shocked. He displayed the quick reflexes of a first-rate expert. His fists danced wildly as he executed the move thousands of men and horses. Every punch accurately struck the tip of the sword. A ding-dang sound rang out. Luckily, his glove was also a spirit tool, so his arms were not shattered by the sword. Little N borrowed the force to soar into the air. A wind blade slid past his body. Feng Zhang waved his wind blade and chased after him again. Little N did not bother with him anymore. Relying on his nimble body, he flew into the crowd and started killing those second- and third-rate experts. Leader Wu finally managed to escape. He lay on the ground and gasped for breath. His arms were in so much pain that they felt like they were going to split, especially his right arm, which had collided with Li Qingshan's fist. It was as soft as mud. All the bones were broken, and his right arm was crippled. Li Qingshan wanted to give him a kick, but Feng Zhang was already in front of him. Wan Hao and Lu Tingrui temporarily stopped their fight and attacked from the left and right. In just a breath's time, Leader Wu took out a pill that flashed with spiritual light and swallowed it. He actually stood up again. Not only did the injuries on his arms recover, even his inner force was completely replenished. I have it too. Li Qingshan crushed the porcelain bottle in his chest and threw the body explosion pill that he took from Void Butcher into his mouth. Who cared about the side effects? He had to get through this first. Bang, 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 bang. His heartbeat suddenly sped up like an engine turning at high speeds. Li Qingshan's skinny body swelled up in a single moment, turning into a burly man. His true qi was stimulated tenfold, bursting out of his body. The long blade and thin sword were blocked by the protective true qi. It was as if they were stuck in a swamp. Wan Hao and Lu Tingrui were shocked. This was clearly innate true qi. He was not a first-rate expert, but an innate expert. To buy blade force. Break. Li Qingshan punched out. The true qi condensed into an iron fist and fiercely smashed onto the blade force. Li Qingshan already had monstrous strength. After taking the body explosion pill, he became even more powerful. He shattered the blade force with one punch. Feng Zhang flew high into the air and shouted anxiously in the air, "If you don't use your trump cards, everyone will die here today." Wan Hao, Lu Tingrui, Hall Leader Wu, and Chu Xian, the 4 first-rate experts, looked at each other. They all had trump cards to protect their lives, but the value of those things was comparable to a quarter of the spiritual ginseng. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would be willing to use them. Seeing Li Qingshan's terrifying appearance, they could no longer care about their treasures. Sigh, we're going to make a loss today. Chu Xian sighed and took out a talisman. The other 3 people's actions were exactly the same. Li Qingshan's pupils constricted. He could not let them use their trump cards as they wished. Just as he lifted his foot, a terrifying gust of wind came from behind him. He suddenly looked back and saw that the second-rate expert, who was almost killed by him in one move, had taken out a talisman and stuck it on the blade in his hand. The blade was immediately enveloped in a layer of sharp blade force, and he slashed down. Li Qingshan felt that even if he had copper skin and iron bones, he would still be cut in half. Li Qingshan looked down on this second-rate expert too much because he did not have a spiritual weapon in his hand. Normal weapons could not break through his ox demon forges, its hide, at all. However, he did not think that he would have such a move. It was already too late for him to dodge. Seeing that he was about to make a contribution with one slash and take revenge for his fellow disciple, a look of ecstasy appeared on the face of that second-rate expert. Suddenly, a sword light slashed across his neck, and his head flew high into the air with blood. The corpse fell forward due to inertia, revealing the figure of Little, and behind it, his white bones were already dyed red with blood. Behind him, dozens of second- and third-rate experts were lying dead on the ground. With a long sword in hand, his killing efficiency was much higher than Li Qingshan's. "Many thanks." Li Qingshan smiled and took the large blade that had been strengthened by the talisman. The 2 of them stood back to back, facing all the enemies. The sky was as black as ink, and the night of slaughter continued. Taking advantage of this gap, the 4 first-rate experts bit the tip of their tongues and used the talismans in their hands. Cool Breeze Talisman. Lu Tingrui stuck the talisman on her leg, and a stream of air circled around her leg. Her movement technique was excellent to begin with, far surpassing that of Dragon's Gate sex Yang Anji. After using the Cool Breeze Talisman, she floated to Li Qingshan's side like a ghost. "It's your fortune to be able to die by so many precious talismans. And there's also the monster you brought with you." She stabbed out with her sword. Just as Little and was about to block it, she floated to the other side. Chapter 85. Metal Talisman of Sharpness. Wan Hao stuck the talisman to his blade and condensed it into a meter-long blade, aura. With a swing, it was impossible for Li Qingshan to survive another strike from him. As for Hall Chief Wu, he stuck the talisman to his chest, and a golden figure similar to the master of the Black Wind stronghold, Xiong Xiangu, rose up from his body. It was also a guardian talisman, but its color was much brighter. He charged over and launched a series of heavy punches. Feng Zhang stopped right there and sheathed his wind-entwining blade. He looked at Li Qingshan like he was looking at a dead man. Let alone Li Qingshan. Even he would be dead if he was caught in a pincer attack like this. It would be very difficult for Li Qingshan to deal with even a single one of them. He stomped down heavily, and the ground collapsed into a huge pit. The ox demon stamps, its hooves shook up the surroundings, and the 4 first-rate masters all paused. However, he did not dare to use this opportunity to strike. Instead, he used his full strength and leapt into the air at the same time as Little, and everyone raised their heads, and a variety of expressions appeared on their faces. If Li Qingshan had forcefully charged through, he might have had a chance at survival, but he had leapt into the air, which was equivalent to cutting off his path of survival. In the air, there was no room for him to dodge or borrow force. The moment he fell out of the air would be the moment of his death. Li Qingshan reached the highest point. Right when he was about to descend, he suddenly unfurled the cursive sword calligraphy. A stroke, a horizontal stroke, a vertical stroke, and a hook lit up on it. Long before the 3 of them had surrounded him, Li Qingshan had already gripped the cursive sword calligraphy and channeled all of his true qi into it. Ever since he obtained the cursive sword calligraphy, his true qi had constantly strengthened. Not only had he ingested the Bodhi brew today, but he had also ingested the entire spiritual ginseng. Just now, he had ingested a body eruption pill. His true qi had become unprecedentedly powerful, pushing the power of the spiritual artifact to an unprecedented limit. The moment the cursive sword calligraphy unfurled, Feng Zhang's eyes lit up. A mid-grade spiritual artifact. No, it's a high-grade spiritual artifact. Run. Instead, he ravished with joy. If he could obtain a high-grade spiritual artifact, even being expelled from the Hawkwolf Guard would be worth it. Li Qingshan gathered all of his concentration and tried to control this high-grade spirit artifact. He didn't know if it was really his will that worked, or if it was just the spirit artifact itself that had automatically locked onto those hostile intents. A curl, a press, a horizontal, a vertical, and a hook flew toward Feng Zhang and the others. There was no need for Feng Zhang to remind them. At the moment Li Qingshan executed cursive sword calligraphy, these first-rate elites with sharp senses sensed an incredibly terrifying killing intent, and they reacted instinctively. Marriott waved his blade towards the sky, using offense as defense, and ingeniously sealed off the direction of the attack. However, in the face of absolute power, all moves were useless. Vertical fell straight down, and the blade along with the blade shattered inch by inch. In an instant, it pierced through the top of Marriott's head. He was stunned for a moment, and then his whole body crashed to the ground. Hull Chief Wu crossed his arms and used iron chains traversing the river. Combined with the protection of the Guardian King's talisman, he formed the strongest defense he could muster, but he was caught off guard by the hook. 2 first-rate masters who had used trump cards were instantly slain, demonstrating the terror of high-grade spiritual artifacts. Lu Tingrui relied on her impressive movement technique to fly away as quickly as she could. Chu Xian had been standing the furthest the entire time, and his reactions were the fastest as well. His rotund figure rolled to one side immediately. With a press and a horizontal slash, 2 streaks of blood appeared. The 2 of them cried out and collapsed on the ground, leaving behind an arm and a leg. They were heavily injured. The fiercest and brightest curl flew towards Feng Zhang. Feng Zhang sank into a horse stance and took out 2 talismans, sticking them on his blade and his body. The wind-entwining blade released a blade aura that was 5 feet long, and a golden bell condensed around him. If the Guardian King's talisman could be used to kill, then the Golden Bell talisman was completely for protection. As a second-layer Qi practitioner and a member of the Hawkwolf Guard, his wealth was even greater than those first-rate masters combined. However, he purposefully saved it up so that the first-rate masters would risk their lives. It would be best if all of them died, and he would not have to give them the pills he promised. His thoughts were quite vicious. However, when he saw the high-grade spiritual artifact in Li Qingshan's hand, he immediately felt that it was no longer a pity. In that moment, there was a surge of light, dazzling everyone. Even the thick layer of snow in front of the mountain god temple was swept away. The blade shattered, the bell shattered, but he was still alive. The scene that Li Qingshan worried about the most happened. Only the hilt of the wind-entwining blade remained in Feng Zhang's hand, and his clothes were in tatters, covered in countless tiny wounds. However, he smiled complacently as he gazed at Li Qingshan in the air. Li Qingshan's heart completely sank. There was a sharp whistle behind him. Lu Tingrue's eyes were blood-red. He used his remaining hand to unleash a metallic storm. Li Qingshan pushed Little N aside and swung his blade to block with great difficulty. However, all of his true qi had been drained away. The side effects of the body eruption pill kicked in at the same time, making him feel like he was about to explode. Little N extended his hand in vain, watching helplessly as he was blown away by the metallic storm. In that moment, who knew how many hidden weapons he had been hit by, he smashed through the roof of the mountain god temple and landed on the bonfire. The mountain gods had rolled to one side. Its face was scorched with a hideous smile, as if it was laughing at Li Qingshan's overestimation of himself. As soon as Little N landed on the ground, he charged straight towards the mountain god temple. His slender sword stabbed out diagonally. Lu Tingrue stood on one foot and said resentfully, "I'll kill you, you monster!" Feng Zhang did not pursue Li Qingshan. He took out another talisman and shot it into the temple. A ball of fire exploded in the temple. The mountain god temple, which was already on the verge of collapse, instantly collapsed. Flames soared into the sky and could be seen from 5 kilometers away. Feng Zhang felt that Li Qingshan had too many secrets. He was afraid that Li Qingshan still had a killing move, so he did not want to take the risk and used a talisman to finish him off. After all, it was impossible for a superior-grade spiritual weapon to be destroyed in this kind of fire. When the time came, he would just have to pick it up from Li Qingshan's ashes. The flames in Little N's eye sockets burned like blood. He attacked Lu Tingrue crazily, as if he wanted to perish together with Feng Zhang. Lu Tingrue dodged to the side and saw Little N charging towards the mountain god temple, wanting to snatch Li Qingshan out of the sea of fire. She could not help but mutter, "Monster!" Chu Xin attacked again. The hidden weapons landed on Little N's body. He staggered and fell to the ground, but he immediately got up. Feng Zhang smiled coldly and waved his sleeve. His true qi surged and sent Little N flying. He stood in front of the fire like a mountain, separating him from Li Qingshan. He shouted, "You two idiots, hurry up and kill him. Don't let him escape." However, he was thinking of a way to silence him. He could not let anyone know about the superior-grade spiritual weapon. Chapter 86. But now they were either dead or crippled. They no longer had the strength to fight against Feng Zhang, and they were also afraid that he would turn against them. Shaowen did not flee. He knelt on the ground as cracks appeared all over his body. He stared at the sea of fire as 2 streaks of bloody tears rolled down his cheeks. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. However, everyone felt like he was crying. Feng Zhang turned around, his face full of a gloomy smile. In the end, I still have to do it myself. His smile suddenly froze. A terrifying feeling came from behind him, as if a terrifying beast had awakened in the raging fire. A wild roar soared into the sky. That was not a sound a human could make. Feng Zhang turned around and saw a black shadow stand up from the flames, shaking off the flames on its body. It was 3 meters tall and had a pair of sharp horns that pierced the sky. 2 dots of red light suddenly lit up. Li Qingshan lay motionless in the raging fire. In this life and death crisis, just as he had expected, his demon tiger bone forging fist had finally broken through to the first level. There was no powerful surge of power as he had imagined. He felt that his body was undergoing an extremely strange change. Everything was being torn apart, changed, and reshaped. The flames gradually became less unbearably hot, but he still did not dare to open his eyes. Oxen's words rang in his ears again. Only by cultivating these 2-fist techniques to the first level can you be considered to have truly learned this remarkable ability. Although his eyes were tightly shut through the layers of flames, he seemed to feel that the little skeleton rushing overhead heard his cries. Little Anne. An indescribable feeling rose in his heart and turned into a wild roar. Li Qingshan stood up from the flames and suddenly opened his eyes. The burning red light was no longer hidden in the depths of his eyes, but revealed its sharpness. He stepped forward and crushed the mountain god's head with an iron hoof. Under the invisible pressure, the flames bloomed like lotus flowers. He walked out of the sea of fire step by step. All the surviving people on the peak held their breath and opened their eyes wide. His huge body was as majestic as an iron tower. His pitch-black skin seemed to be forged from black iron. Mysterious beast marks extended from his head to his limbs. His feet had turned into iron hooves, and his hands had turned into sharp claws. A pair of bull horns were so sharp that they seemed like they were going to tear through the sky. His fiery red hair, or rather his hair, was scattered wildly behind him, dancing wildly in the light and fire. Demonic chi soared into the sky, and the legend began. Feng Zhang reached into his bosom, and a gust of wind blew past him. The scarlet hair even brushed past his face. His body stiffened, his teeth chattered, and his body trembled. He no longer had any thoughts of resisting. There was only one thought left in his mind. Run. A demon, even if it was a low-level demonic beast, was not something a second-layer chi practitioner like him could fend off. Apart from the wind-entwining blade from the Hawkwolf Guard, he did not possess a single decent spiritual artifact that could support him in battle against a demon. Li Qingshan's target was not Feng Zhang. When Lu Tingrui saw Li Qingshan emerge from the sea of fire, she turned around and fled without the slightest hesitation at all. The effects of the talisman were still present, so she actually moved extremely quickly. She leapt into the air, and a huge claw grabbed her head from behind. Li Qingshan said, "Tell me, who's the monster?" His voice was deep and hoarse, like the ringing of metal. It was filled with cold, killing intent. His fangs were white, and his eyes flickered with red light. Lu Tingrui opened her mouth, but all she produced was an unconscious gurgling sound. She could be regarded as a first-rate master who had run amok in the Jianghu, but she had never seen a true demon before. She felt like a mouse that had fallen into a cat's paw, like she had run into a natural predator. Endless fear weighed down on her. This feeling was even more terrifying than death. Clang, clang, clang. Countless hidden weapons landed on Li Qingshan, kicking up a series of sparks. Li Qingshan turned around and said, "Piss off." The sound waves infused with demon chi were like heavy hammers. Chu Xian flew out 7 or 8 meters. His head tilted to one side, and he could not be more dead. A second-rate master, lying on the ground suddenly leapt high into the air. He stuck a talisman on his sword and attached a layer of sword intent. It turned out that he had been pretending to be dead all this while. At this moment, he wanted to take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack from behind Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan was just about to turn around when a tiger's tail lashed out like a steel whip, almost splitting the second-rate master in half at the waist. Li Qingshan looked back at his tail in shock. He suddenly discovered that he had gained another function, and his body's reaction was even faster than his consciousness. Li Qingshan casually clenched his fist, and his head shattered like a watermelon. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the spot. One by one, he appeared beside the remaining second- and third-rate disciples and began a massacre. In a few breaths' time, there was not a single person left alive on the mountain peak. Only Feng Zhang was left, fleeing down the mountain. Li Qingshan bent his knees slightly, and the ground suddenly cracked. He had already shot up into the sky. Feng Zhang was fleeing for his life when a black shadow descended from the sky, stomping on his body with the force of 1,000 caddies. Feng Zhang's cultivation could be considered impressive, but in front of Li Qingshan's absolute speed and strength, he actually did not have the slightest ability to resist. Blood spurted out of his mouth. "Monster, you are a monster!" Feng Zhang's hands clawed at the ground. However, not to mention that he was no match for Li Qingshan's current strength. Even if Li Qingshan let go of his foot, his internal organs and spine would still be crushed. He could only survive by relying on his innate qinqi. Li Qingshan bent down and said in a low voice, "I will tear your limbs off one by one." His eyes were as red as blood, filled with the hatred and anger of humans. He was 10 times more savage and brutal than ordinary demons. Little and tugged at Li Qingshan's hand. Li Qingshan madly slapped him. "Scram!" Seeing Little, and an idea flashed through his mind. Li Qingshan abruptly stopped his hand, and the strong wind he had stirred up almost blew Little and over. He looked at Li Qingshan in fear, not knowing what to do. "Little, and I'm sorry, Li Qingshan grabbed his head, and between his fingers, a red light flickered. Little and stepped forward once more, grabbing Li Qingshan's hand, or rather, his claws. Li Qingshan forcefully suppressed all kinds of savage thoughts. He stomped Feng Zhang to death, giving him a quick death. He looked at his hands that had turned into beast claws, and all kinds of frenzied thoughts rampaged in his mind. He knelt on the ground, raised his head to the sky, and let out a wild howl. The sky was pitch black and thick. Dark clouds covered the stars and moon. However, above the clouds was a boundless sea of clouds. Under the moonlight, it was as tranquil as a fairyland. A white figure stood alone above the sea of clouds, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He looked like an otherworldly immortal. Gu Yening lowered her head, and her black pupils contracted rapidly. They glowed with a golden light, as sharp as an eagle's. They pierced through the clouds and landed on Li Qingshan's body. Her intuition wasn't wrong. When she saw Li Qingshan under the guest pine, she smelled the aura on him. It wasn't because he hadn't bathed, but because it was too weak, so she couldn't be sure. She made Li Qingshan drink a cup of Bodhi brew, which made Li Qingshan's true qi go out of control and increase dramatically. Only then did she confirm her guess. Chapter 87. When faced with demons, the first thing that regular cultivators would think of was to purge demons, and Gu Yening definitely possessed the strength to do that. Although Li Qingshan's strength and speed had increased drastically after transforming into a demon, it was impossible for him to defeat a golden core master. But right now, there was no killing intent on her face. Her usual graceful smile had vanished as well. Instead, it was filled with a faint sense of pity. Under the moonlight, she seemed like a jade carving. Soon afterwards, She broke free from these emotions and exhaled gently before smiling freely. Little brother Qingshan, from today onwards, you can only treat the mountains and forests as your home. We probably won't be able to meet again in this life unless you become a demon general or even a demon commander. But by then, we'll probably be enemies. Have a safe journey. She murmured softly and even waved her hand, completely ignoring the fact that Li Qingshan could not hear or see her from the ground. With a wave of her sleeves, she flew off like a white eagle. Only after flying over 5 kilometers away did she carve out a deep trench in the sea of clouds with the fierce winds she kicked up. The white eagle landed on the edge of the well and saw what she wanted to see. A special frog had added an interesting experience to her life. However, no matter how interesting it was, a frog was still a frog. At most, it had become a little stronger. There were matters that were hundreds or even thousands of times more important than this that awaited her. If she could not find that damned cat, it was very likely for the 2 great sects of the Green Province, the Sword Collection Palace and the Umbral Een sect, to start a war. The backyard of the provincial lord's estate would be set ablaze as well. However, she failed to sense that as she observed Li Qingshan, an oxen was also watching her from the darkness on the ground. For a Jindan stage expert, this was simply inconceivable. Her spiritual sense was very sharp, and she also knew some divination techniques. However, if she could really divine the future, she would know that a frog would not remain a frog forever. Li Qingshan howled for a while before he barely managed to calm down. Little N did her best to comfort him from one side. He glanced at Little N. Only now did he truly understand what it felt like for Little N to turn into a skeleton. To a human, turning into something else was just too great of an impact. Oxen emerged from the darkness with a wide smile on her face. She looked at Li Qingshan and clicked her tongue in wonder, like an artist looking at a work of art that she was extremely satisfied with. Li Qingshan said, "You knew this would happen? This isn't some kind of ability from 9 oxen and 2 tigers." His current strength had definitely far surpassed the strength of an ox. In other words, the strength of an ox did not refer to the strength of an ox, but the strength of an ox demon. Oxen said, "Looks like it's quite effective." Li Qingshan suddenly lunged towards the black ox and swung down with his right claw viciously. The claw was like a curved blade, shining in the darkness. The black ox did not dodge. His smile remained the same. Shaoan lunged over from the side and knocked Li Qingshan away. Trembling, Li Qingshan grabbed the ground with both hands. "I'm sorry, Brother Ox. I don't know what's wrong with me." His heart was filled with anger. Any bit of anger and dissatisfaction would ignite it and lead to a massacre. Although oxen might have tricked him, he was already aware of this. Just like in the legends, those who made a deal with the devil had to pay a price when they obtained power. Although it was cruel, it was fair, and there shouldn't be any complaints. Moreover, the black ox had also proved that the remarkable ability it had taught him was indeed not an ordinary one. However, in terms of the effects of refining his body, this remarkable ability had truly reached an unbelievable level. In just a few months, his body had reached an unbelievable level of toughness. Oxen said, "Your temperament is not enough to control your demonic nature. However, I'm already very surprised that you can do this." You are right. Although it is derived from the Taoist body tempering ability, it is no longer 9 oxen and 2 tigers. There is no ability that can turn a human into a demon. Now, what should I do? Is there any way for me to regain my human form? Li Qingshan didn't want to spend the rest of his life in the deep mountains. It's very simple. As long as you pass the first heaven's tribulation and become a demon general, which is the human foundation establishment realm, you can transform. How long will it take? If it's fast, 100 years. What? Li Qingshan's eyes flashed red. I can live for 100 years. Don't worry. After transforming, your lifespan will greatly increase. Li Qingshan gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to lose control of the murderous intent in his heart, Oxen said, but it's not like there is no other way. Li Qingshan said, what way? Oxen said, I'll teach you another ability. All right, you are actually not a complete demon yet. Li Qingshan said, and after cultivating this ability, I can become a complete demon? Oxen smiled, but didn't say anything. Li Qingshan knew that he could only walk this path to the end. The fire was still burning. Li Qingshan and Little and looked at each other and said, all right, now that we are both not human, only you don't despise me. They really were connected by the same disease. Big brother, don't laugh at second brother. Little and desperately nodded, expressing that he didn't despise Li Qingshan at all. Li Qingshan said, don't talk anymore. Hurry up and cultivate. He let Little and used the corpses on the mountain to cultivate and recover from his injuries. At the same time, Li Qingshan also searched the corpses. He found a bottle of spirit medicine on Hall Leader Wu's body. He raised his head and ate it. His injuries immediately recovered. He found a talisman on the sickly scholar Wei Dondong's body. The design was exactly the same as Lu Tingrui's. It should also be a cool breeze talisman that could increase one's speed. He also found a divine talisman like the one he used on Chu Xian's body. It looked like he was indeed rich. Lu Tingrui's thin sword was still intact and glowed brightly. Little An's sword was very dim after the battle and couldn't be used anymore. It was a good replacement. Finally, he found a total of 4 talismans on Feng Zhang's body. They were all the kind that could be used to set fire. There was also a bottle of healing spirit medicine. Judging from its glow, it was much better than Hall Leader Wu's bottle. He carefully put it away. Li Qingshan threw all the corpses into the sea of fire. Seeing that the fire wasn't strong enough, he threw out a fire talisman without hesitation. The fire talisman floated in the air and fell to the ground. It couldn't be activated. Oxen said, demonic chi can't activate talismans and spirit tools unless you can refine them. Li Qingshan tried the cursive sword calligraphy again. As expected, it didn't react at all to the demonic chi he poured in. It refused to accept it. Needless to say, he didn't have the ability to refine it at the moment, so he could only put it away for now. At this time, Little An had healed all the wounds on his body. His bones regained their white color. However, they weren't pale white anymore. Instead, they glowed like jade. His divine art had improved by another level. Seeing that the fire was getting smaller, Little An suddenly opened his mouth and spewed out rolling blood-colored flames. The blood of the corpses was like oil that had been ignited. They soared into blood-colored flames that were several meters tall. They even overshadowed the orange flames and completely destroyed all traces of the corpses. Chapter 88. Li Qingshan could not help but sigh in amazement. Right now, regular first-rate masters were definitely not his opponent. He truly progressed at a godly speed. And he did not face any bottlenecks either. As long as he had enough time and sacrifices, who knew just how powerful he would become? The blood-red flames burned the corpses to a crisp. They circled around in the air before returning to Little An's mouth. The flames in his eye sockets shone even brighter, as if he was absorbing all the vitality from these people into the blood-red flames. After tidying up everything, Li Qingshan called out to Little, and the two of them vanished from the mountain peak. Li Qingshan rampaged through the mountains and forests. The originally tall trees all seemed short now. Whenever he came across trees blocking his way, he would not even try to avoid them at all at times, directly ramming through them and shattering the trunks, forcefully carving out a path through the forest. Not only had his strength and speed changed, but his senses had also reached an unprecedented level. Everything in the forest was so clear and bright. Even the forest in the middle of winter possessed a different kind of color. All sounds were so clear. Under the thick layer of snow and mud, even the gentle breathing of a wild rabbit could be heard clearly. The surroundings were filled with life. He was like a savage who had returned to the primordial times, cheering for everything in nature. It was like his heart was filled with honey, as if this was the world that belonged to him, his paradise. When his body changed, his mind seemed to change as well. Suddenly, he felt like it was not a bad thing to spend his time in the wilderness. However, when he looked at Little and on his shoulder, he immediately returned to his senses. He still had many unfinished promises to complete. He had to help him recover his human form and send him home. Little and also looked at Li Qingshan strangely. Li Qingshan smiled and thanked him inside. After teaching the ability to Li Qingshan, oxen vanished once more. Li Qingshan did not stop, but he silently comprehended the mysteries within. The second ability was called the Spirit Turtle's Method of Sea Suppression, but it was the complete opposite of the 9 oxen and 2 tigers. It was an ability purely for practicing qi and also had 9 layers. As long as he reached the first layer, he would be able to recover his human form and conceal his demon qi, allowing him to return to the human world. This innate ability just happened to be something that Li Qingshan could only practice after his demon qi had built up a certain foundation. It gave him a feeling that the innate abilities the Black Ox had given him were layered on top of one another, all linked together. He had already predicted every single step, laying down a foundation for the future. He did not understand what the Azure Ox's goal was, but in short, it did not seem to have any ill intentions. This was not only because of trust, but also because the Azure Ox understood that he was lowly. There was probably nothing that was worthy of the Azure Ox's ill intentions. As soon as he comprehended the Spirit Turtle's method of sea suppression, Li Qingshan stopped to meditate. The chaotic demon qi gradually gathered, circulating according to a certain pattern. Even his restless mind seemed to become calm as he cultivated. It was very different from the wildness and violence he experienced when he practiced the fist style of the ox demon and tiger demon. Suddenly, he came to a realization. An ability could influence a personality. The Spirit Turtle's method of sea suppression was to neutralize the influence of the ox demon and tiger demon. Spirit Turtles were legendary divine beasts. When their 4 huge pillar-like feet stepped into the sea, they were like 4 pillars that stabilized the sea, able to calm down the waves. Spirit Turtles possessed great power, but they were extremely gentle. They were like eminent monks meditating, extremely patient, and not ostentatious at all. As long as he reached the first layer, he could learn from the Spirit Turtle's breath concealment and conceal all of his demon qi, suppressing the ox demon and tiger demon. That way, he would be able to recover his human form again. However, the rate at which he practiced this ability was just like the Spirit Turtle's personality. It progressed extremely slowly. He had estimated that if he wanted to reach the first layer of the Spirit Turtle's method of sea suppression, he would need to spend years at the very least. He would need to cultivate in the mountains for a decade at the very least, or even 20 to 30 years at the very most. Although it would save him quite a lot of time compared to undergoing the tribulation and becoming a demon general, it was still quite depressing. Unfortunately, the cultivation of demons had always been measured in centuries. If he did not have several centuries of cultivation, he would be embarrassed to greet others. Now that things had developed to this point, all he could do was prepare for a prolonged battle. The sound of water rumbled like thunder. Li Qingshan and Little and returned to where they cultivated last time, before the waterfall that was several dozen meters tall. They planned on cultivating here for a while, since it was called the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. It obviously required water. Li Qingshan's ears twitched. He could vaguely hear singing. He squinted his eyes, only to see a beautiful female figure vaguely visible in the white mist. She had her back to him, as if she was bathing. I can have a romantic encounter like that too. As soon as this thought crossed Li Qingshan's mind, he found it extremely strange. The sound of the waterfall was so loud that even if ordinary people yelled out, it would be drowned out by the sound of the water. However, the singing just happened to be like a needle piercing through all the noise. It was extremely clear. The force of the waterfall was so great that even he could not directly stand under the waterfall. Yet, the petite figure was so relaxed that she seemed like she was taking a shower. Her delicate figure vaguely appeared in the mist. It was extremely enchanting. Li Qingshan did not care about looking at something indecent. He had to get a clear look at something so strange. However, he was destined to not be that lucky with women. As soon as he took a step forward, the singing suddenly stopped. The girl looked back, revealing a pair of jade green eyes. She vanished into the waterfall. The warning bells in Li Qingshan's head rang out. He leapt forward without any regard. Only then did he feel a gust of wind from behind. He felt a few sharp stabs of pain on his back. His impervious skin had actually been cut through the air. So fast. Just as his body was in midair and was about to fly into the waterfall, a slender jade-like hand grabbed his tiger tail and pulled it forcefully. Come back. Li Qingshan's huge body was pulled back in an instant. It seemed that having multiple functions also had its disadvantages. After turning his head to see who it was, even with his willpower, he could not help but be stunned. The person who grabbed his tail with a strange force was actually a 14 or 15-year-old girl in green clothes. Although she was wearing clothes, her pair of astonishingly large jade green eyes could be seen. It was without a doubt the girl who was taking a shower in the waterfall just now. He was not surprised by the other party's age or strength. Instead, on the girl's head, there was a pair of living cat ears. A black cat tail was swaying behind her. The otaku's soul that had been silent for many years at this moment actually had the tendency to break the seal and awaken again. If he had encountered such a thing when he had just transmigrated to this world, he probably would not have become like this. If the feeling that Gu Yenying gave him was that she was beautiful like a fantasy, then she was cute like a fantasy. Chapter 89. The cat girl was also looking at Li Qingshan. What kind of monster are you? How strange. Little and jumped up and came behind the cat girl. He opened his mouth and spat out the blood flame of corpse incineration. The white crescent mark on the cat girl's forehead shot out a bright light and dispelled the blood flame. What kind of monster are you? The cat girl changed from one hand to two, grabbed Li Qingshan's tail, and with herself as the axis, she swung half a circle and slammed into Little, and Li Qingshan carried Little and slammed into the rock wall. Li Qingshan adjusted his body and stepped on the rock wall, landing safely with Little, and the beautiful fantasy disappeared, and he looked at the cat girl warily. She was strong, at least as strong as the Scarlet Eagle commander Wang Pushi. Thinking of Wang Pushi, he thought of Gu Yenying. Was this the cat she was looking for? How was this a pet? It was clearly a terrifying cat demon. The cat girl did not attack again, nor did she seem angered by Li Qingshan's spying. Her green eyes flashed with curiosity. You two are so strange. Li Qingshan said calmly. What's strange? The cat girl said, You also have a human form. Meow Meow should have gone through a heavenly tribulation, but this Meow is weak. How strange. I've never heard of a skeleton that can spit fire. How strange. Li Qingshan had demonified. His figure and voice had changed drastically, but his appearance and body were still roughly human. Li Qingshan shook off the dust on his body. We are just passing by. Please continue. Without hesitation, he turned and left. Although he was a little reluctant, the cute creature that only appeared in his imagination had appeared in front of him. But with great wisdom and perseverance, he instantly extinguished his otaku heart. He made up his mind not to have anything to do with this cat demon. That was not a domain he could touch for the time being. But he soon realized how scary a cat, especially a cat demon, could be when it was curious. Stop right there. You want to leave after seeing me bathe? The cat girl roared. Li Qingshan immediately left. He ran as fast as he could, with all his might. However, he had forgotten a warning. When encountering wild beasts, he must not run, or else he would definitely be chased. The forest receded rapidly, blurring into a blur. Li Qingshan did not dare to stop at all. Suddenly, a bell rang out by his ear. He turned around and saw the cat girl following behind him at a steady pace. The bell on her waist jingled. Meow, ha ha ha, why don't you keep running? Since he couldn't outrun him, there was no need to run anymore. Li Qingshan came to a sudden halt and calmly asked, What do you want to do? The cat girl stopped as well. Her jade-green eyes swiveled around as if she was thinking of something. She circled around Li Qingshan. You can be my pet. She beamed with joy, acting extremely complacent. What? Li Qingshan wondered if he had heard wrongly. Could it be that she was tired of being a pet? So, she turned around to catch other pets? Big Black, what does this name sound like? The cat girl jumped lightly and landed on top of Li Qingshan's head. She grabbed one of his horns and touched Little N's head and said, You will be called Little White. Her movements were extremely fast, leaving a series of afterimages. Her thoughts were also extremely fast. Li Qingshan said, Don't even think about it. He was a transmigrator. If he became a pet, and a pet's pet, it would be a disgrace to all transmigrators in the world. The weight on top of his head suddenly increased, and the cat girl's light body suddenly became as heavy as Mount Tai. Li Qingshan was pressed to one knee and lowered his head. Big Black, I am not negotiating with you. The cat girl said, If you agree, there will be countless benefits. I will not mistreat you. If you don't agree, I don't mind tasting you. The demon's ferocious nature was obvious. It was not as cute as it looked. Li Qingshan sneered and said, What benefits? Cat food? Before he had even finished speaking, a shining pill landed in his mouth and immediately turned into surging spiritual qi, filling his body and almost bursting out. Even with his demon body that was countless times more powerful than before, he actually felt like he could not contain this spiritual qi. Li Qingshan used the mental cultivation method of the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression in a hurry to absorb and circulate the spiritual qi. The spirit turtle's method of qi suppression that had been progressing slowly suddenly made a tiny dash forward. The effects of the pill were several times more potent than the spiritual alcohol soaked in the spiritual ginseng. Did you steal all of this from your master? What? I would never steal my master's things. Master gave all of this to me. I still have a lot more. What, are you tempted? Meow. Li Qingshan basically understood what it meant by wine and meat go to waste. He had no idea who the Dark Queen was, but she even fed her pets with spiritual herbs like this. She was as extravagant as she could get. However, if he really had the assistance of so many spiritual herbs, he would definitely be able to complete the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression very soon. recover his human form, and return to the world of humans. He had to admit that the carrot and the stick, were quite effective no matter who it was used on and who it was used on. Most importantly, he did not have the right to choose at all. Li Qingshan said, "What do you want me to do?" The cat girl did a backflip and landed gently before Li Qingshan. "That's more like it, meow. You're my pet, so you obviously have to do whatever I want you to do, meow. Right now, I want you to take me out of the Green Province." As a frog in a well who had never left the vicinity of Qingyang City his entire life, Li Qingshan was immediately stunned by this great ambition. "Where do you want to go?" "To the Dragon Province." "How do I get there?" Li Qingshan was rather confused. "And where was the Dragon Province?" "You don't even know that, meow. Follow the boundless mountains and head north. You'll have to cross around several thousand mountains." The cat girl gazed into the distance, and her gaze suddenly became extremely distant. Her tender and cute face possessed the romance and vicissitudes of a traveler. She no longer wanted to be anyone's pet. She wanted to be as free as the wind. Li Qingshan actually felt shocked. He sucked in a deep breath. "But you're referring to the south." "Shut up, master. I know." The cat girl flew into a rage out of humiliation and kicked him. Li Qingshan raised his hand to block it, but he still felt his hand burn. After a moment of thought, he looked at the cat girl and said, "I can help you go to the Dragon Province as long as you pay me with pills." Chapter 90. Li Qingshan sensed his abnormality and asked, "Little, and what's wrong?" Little and only shook her head in confusion. Only then did Li Qingshan ease up. "All right, Xianyue, tell me now, why don't you go to the Dragon Province by yourself? Bringing me along will only drag you down." "Call me master. I'm being chased, so I have to cover my ears. And you have no sense of direction." Li Qingshan obviously could not say that. The answer did not surprise him. Xuanyue's master, the Dark Queen, definitely possessed great authority to be able to make Gu Yenying search for a cat for her. She probably would not be the only one mobilized by Gu Yenying. However, since they were searching for a pet and not catching a criminal, the mission seemed relatively safe. Even if they failed, they would not die. Moreover, since the cat was bold enough to escape, it was not like they had no confidence at all. Anyway, it was worth a gamble. Li Qingshan said straightforwardly, "No problem, Xianyue. However, I think we should rest up for now and come up with a foolproof plan before setting off." He had a deep impression of Gu Yenying's terrifying senses. Perhaps she would be looking down from the sky at any time. Now that she had become like this, she might even be purged as soon as she saw her. The veins on Xuanyue's forehead bulged. "I said it's master. Is that so, Xianyue?" "Meow." Xuanyue's tail straightened. She finally erupted. Li Qingshan grabbed Little, who was about to fight back. He allowed her to kick and hit him, but he gritted his teeth and refused to let go. He discovered that while she was extremely fast, her strength was not particularly great. He could still endure her punches and kicks. Xianyue vented her anger randomly, but she could not bring herself to be heavy-handed. After all, she still had a lot of things to rely on Li Qingshan for. She said coldly, "Come with me." She brought Li Qingshan back to the waterfall. Afterwards, she pulled Li Qingshan towards the waterfall. Passing through the water curtain, Li Qingshan crashed into the rock wall. Just when Li Qingshan thought he was going to crash into the mountain, the thick rock wall turned into a mirage and passed through it. There was actually a completely different world inside. It was an extremely spacious cave. Looking at the chisel marks, it was clearly opened up recently. It seemed that she had been hiding here during this period of time. The place that Oxen had chosen for Li Qingshan to cultivate was indeed a scenic spot. Xianyue took out a small flag from her bell. Her cat, Bell, was actually a storage bag. "Are you Tinkerbell?" Li Qingshan was flabbergasted. Moreover, the little flag's spiritual light was flowing and its divine splendor was restrained. It was clearly an extremely rare spiritual artifact. Xianyue placed the small flag at the entrance and immediately sealed the cave. Not even a trace of spirit qi or demonic qi leaked out. Then she took out various items from her bell. First, she spread out a thick piece of cloth woven from the fur of an unknown animal. Then she placed a small table on top of it. After that, she placed exquisite tableware carved from either ivory or jade. She clearly had the ability to see in the night, yet she took out a lampstand. At the top of the lampstand was not a flame, but a pearl the size of a fist. The misty light illuminated the cave, but it was not dazzling at all. Finally, she took out a red-crowned, crane-shaped incense burner. A strange fragrance was slowly released from it. All of these items contained spiritual light. When the pearl shone on her body, the circulation of the spirit qi in her body sped up, and when she smelled the strange fragrance, she felt refreshed and her mind became much clearer. None of these items could be measured with 1,000 gold. How was this a pet? She was practically a princess. To think that she, a fugitive, could actually prepare to this extent. This was really too extravagant. Xianyue sat down on the thick carpet and took out a piece of snow-white fish. "It's time to eat." She did not use any of the exquisite tableware. She directly dug in and buried her head in the food. Li Qingshan was dumbfounded. Even the fish was glowing with spiritual light. Xianyue glanced at him. She thought about how she was also very willful in front of Master, but Master was always very tolerant. She felt that since she had already risen to the level of Master, she should learn from him. She said reservedly, "Dehei, this is for you." She magnanimously forgave Li Qingshan's willfulness and felt a wave of pride in her heart. "Dehei, can't I have a better name?" Li Qingshan thought to himself, but looking at him, he did not want to reveal his real name. "Dehei it is." He took a piece of meat and began eating. Once he started eating, he could not stop. Although this fish had not been cooked, it tasted extremely delicious. It melted in his mouth and was definitely better than any other delicacy he had ever eaten. And once he ate it, his demon qi would gradually grow. It had the effects of spiritual medicines. Originally, even if he ate a deer, he would not feel particularly full, but today he only ate a piece of fish and felt his stomach swell. "Just who is this Dark Queen? Does she not treat you well?" Xianyue glanced at him with a gaze of disdain at first before saying with great admiration, "There's no one in the world that treats you or better than Her Majesty the Dark Queen. She's beautiful, noble, and powerful. When I first came to her side, I couldn't even be regarded as a demon. It was she who gave me so many pills and medicines to eat." "Then why are you still running? Don't interrupt me." Xianyue shot a glance at Li Qingshan in displeasure. Her eyes widened to a frightening size as she leaned against her hand. "But that person is just too clingy. She's always hugging me all day, even when I'm sleeping. Tell me, how can you put up with that?" Li Qingshan thought, if the Dark Queen really is as noble and beautiful as she says, then I would be overjoyed. Then he studied Xianyue. "Even if you're like this, I can accept it." "Forget it. You won't understand, even if I tell you. You seem to have some intelligence and aren't as stupid as regular demonic beasts, but you still can't understand such deep and complicated emotions. Freedom. Do you understand what that means?" Xianyue said to herself. She had no intentions of letting Li Qingshan answer her at all. Her cat ears twitched. Amidst a bunch of narcissistic sighs, Li Qingshan still managed to find the information he wanted. in the entire Green Province. Only the wife of the governor of the Green Province, Chu Lai King's concubine, had the right to be referred to as a concubine. The authority of the governor of the Green Province covered the entire Green Province. Xian Yu had fled from the governor's estate, so she could only flee to another province. Chapter 91. Li Qingshan curled his lip. He had almost been fooled by her. What freedom! She was clearly just being carefree and hating work. She wanted to live an even more extravagant life. He wanted to ask more about the 9-tailed fox queen and the 10 demon kings, but she had already changed the topic. She returned to how cute she was, which was why the 9-tailed fox queen had chosen her and invited her to the Dragon Province. She did not allow Li Qingshan to interrupt her. She continued until she was tired of talking. It's getting late. Time to sleep. She took out a huge cat basket from the bell. It was covered in thick velvet. She curled up comfortably in there. Li Qingshan said, "It's still daytime right now." Xian Yue extinguished the pearl with a wave of her hand. "Daytime is for sleeping. We'll set off at night." Li Qingshan looked at her sleeping form. Her long eyelashes overlapped, her fine nose tilted up slightly, and her lips were pressed together. Her curled-up body seemed even more petite and delicate, lacking her usual stubbornness and willfulness. She seemed so delicate that he could not help but feel the urge to protect her from the bottom of his heart. He shook his head violently. Now was not the time to admire a beauty. She was not someone he needed his protection or someone he could pursue. From a certain perspective, she was still an enemy. How could he be bewitched by her? It was best if he raised his guard. Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief and exchanged glances with little Anne. He found today's experiences to be far too strange. He glanced at the girl in the cat basket before arriving in a corner of the dwelling and meditating. He continued to practice the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. Little Anne sat down beside him and meditated as well. Xian Yue flipped around in the cat basket a few times. Suddenly, she said, "Big Black, sing me a song." "I don't," Li Qingshan said firmly. "What's the point of having you around?" Xian Yue opened her eyes. "Then let me go." "Forget it, I'll teach you." Li Qingshan rubbed his forehead. Before he could even say anything, Xian Yue began singing to herself. Xian Yue sang to herself, "Little kitty, good kitty, go to sleep." The gentle singing drifted through the cave. It was extremely pleasant, but Li Qingshan curled his lips. It was clearly a lullaby for coaxing a child. He thought the Dark Queen was probably the type of cat lover who raised cats like they were her children, but when it came from her mouth, it was extremely pleasant with a hint of tenderness. When Little Anne heard this, the blood flames in his eyes surged, and his heart surged endlessly. However, there seemed to be a layer of membrane separating them, and he couldn't understand where this feeling came from. "I'm done. You can sing now." "I don't remember it. Sing it again." Li Qingshan said in his heart, "I am a dignified 10-foot man. I walk the path of violence. How can I sing this kind of song?" "You can't even remember something so simple." Li Qingshan said, "I'm a country demon. I'm stupid and stupid, so of course I don't know anything. I can't remember anything." As a result, Xian Yue sang it again patiently, but the result was the same. Li Qingshan still could not remember it. Xian Yue wanted to lose her temper, but she changed her mind and held a pill between her fingers. She smiled. "If you sing, you'll get pills to eat. Little kitty, good kitty, go to sleep." Li Qingshan immediately began to sing at the top of his lungs. Why wouldn't he sing if there were benefits? He was just selling his skills, not his body. The great leader had once said that the working people were the most glorious. However, his voice was deep and husky, like the hum of metal, coupled with his forceful roar. A lullaby was forcefully given a rock and roll feeling by him. Stop singing. You're so noisy. Xianyue tossed the pill into Li Qingshan's mouth. Li Qingshan sniggered and swallowed the pill, continuing to meditate and cultivate. He did not know the name of the pill, but the effects of each pill were as if he had been reborn. The effects were unbelievably strong. To ordinary people, or even cultivators, these pills were probably treasures that were extremely difficult to obtain. Now that he only needed to shout a few times, it was a heaven-sent opportunity. Xianyue was no longer sleepy from his noise. She asked curiously, "What's with your appearance?" "Let me guess. Your mother is a tiger, and your father is a cow?" Li Qingshan did not answer. It sounded like a curse no matter how he heard it. However, when he thought that she was also an animal, he could only bear with it. "How about your father is a tiger, and your mother is a cow?" Li Qingshan reluctantly answered with a yep. Xianyue said, "I knew it. No wonder you can transform despite being so weak. Your parents are demons and not weak ones at that. Right, where did they go?" Li Qingshan said calmly, "Dead." He was thinking of his parents in this life. Xianyue fell silent. "I'm sorry." Then she said, "Me too." Li Qingshan looked over in surprise. Xianyue said, "Go to sleep." She turned her back to him and said nothing more. Li Qingshan sighed gently. Suddenly he sang softly, "Little kitty, good kitty, go to sleep." Xuanyue's ears twitched and listened quietly as well. For a moment, there were no other sounds in the cave. 50 kilometers away, an old man with a sword on his back descended from the sky, landing on the Dragon's Gate mountain. He looked at the collapsed buildings and frowned. His grayish-white hair was tied up in a bun, and he had a wisp of beard that was trimmed meticulously. His eyes shone brightly, but they were reserved and did not shine brightly. He actually resembled the soaring dragon swordsman that was worshipped. However, he was no longer a swordsman of the Jianghu in dire straits. Instead, he was the soaring dragon elder of the Sword Collection Palace. He closed his eyes and sensed, and his frown deepened. The peachwood prayer sword he had left behind had actually failed to kill the enemy. The peachwood prayer sword was a secret technique of the Sword Collection Palace. It required the peachwood sword to be worshipped day and night, without a single day of rest. Over time, it would accumulate a tremendous amount of willpower and power of belief. Once it was used, its power would be unstoppable. The soaring dragon elder decided to put this matter aside for now. The Dragon's Gate sect was only a connection he had left behind when he wandered the secular world in the past. In the blink of an eye, a century had already passed, so he did not really care about it. He would deal with his business first before finding that person and killing him in a single stroke. Just when he was about to move, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Gazing over sharply, he saw a white figure descend from above. Gu Yening smiled. It was exactly the same as when Li Qingshan had first obtained it. She also had an illiterate expression. "You still have something like this. This is a spiritual artifact that only humans can use, right? I think you're pretty amazing." Li Qingshan said, "This is mine. What's yours is mine. Also, who cares about this broken thing of yours? This master has seen countless magic artifacts and treasures. It's just a spiritual artifact." Xianyue tossed her hand back to Li Qingshan. Then she played with the locust wood tablet. The edges of the tablet were already burnt, and it did not look very impressive. "What is this? There's no spiritual qi at all. The craftsmanship is also so poor. Nan, and what is the meaning of this?" When Li Qingshan touched his waist, and sure enough, it was empty. Before he could even say anything, Xiao and extended his hand to take the wooden tablet. How could Xianyue let him succeed? She dodged it with a gentle sway, but Xiaoan refused to give up. Xianyue dodged several of Xiaoan's attacks in the blink of an eye. You don't have to be so anxious about a spiritual artifact. Tell me what this is for, and I'll give it back to you. Li Qingshan stopped little, and this is a promise. What promise? Although Li Qingshan was unwilling to say, he knew that she was curious. She would not give up until she reached her goal. I promised to send him home. His home is in the south. Xianyue was stunned. I couldn't tell that you treat your pet so well. He's not my pet. She casually waved her hand. Your reaction is too slow. She drew a silver arc in the air. A snake, head the size of a water tank, fell to the ground. Blood spurted out. It was a patterned python that had been hiding in the forest. Li Qingshan avoided the blood and looked up to see the snake's body coiled around the tree trunk. It was dozens of feet long and had the same color as the tree trunk. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see it. It was a living python disaster. Although he had seen many strange things, he could not help but be amazed that there were such strange and terrifying creatures in this world. If it came to a human village, it would be able to easily slaughter everyone. Li Qingshan smelled the demonic qi on the snake and knew that it was a so-called demonic beast. He had read many wuxia novels and immediately climbed up the tree to retrieve the snake's gallbladder. Only then did he discover that the snake's skin was extremely tough. Without the infusion of demonic qi, he still spent a lot of effort to break it open. One could imagine how terrifying this demonic beast would be if it was alive. It was only because it had chosen the wrong target that it was killed by Xianyue, grabbing the greenish-black snake's gallbladder. Li Qingshan, in the spirit of not being afraid of pain, closed his eyes and swallowed it in one gulp under Little N's shocked gaze. Why did you swallow the poison sac? Xianyue asked curiously. What? Poison sac? Li Qingshan's expression changed. His originally pale face became even more ashen. His heartbeat sped up as the poison attacked his heart. To put it bluntly, Li Qingshan had never done something like retrieving a snake's gallbladder in both of his lives. How could he become a wilderness survival expert after just one transmigration? Meow, ha ha. Xianyue fell to the ground, laughing. Seeing that Li Qingshan had fallen to the ground from the poison, she took out a round ball from the snake's body and stuffed it into Li Qingshan's mouth. Here, this is the snake's gallbladder. Li Qingshan's body had already stiffened. He forcefully swallowed the snake's gallbladder, but the poison only eased slightly. Xianyue then took out a spiritual medicine from the bell. This is a poison-dispelling pill. Li Qingshan lay down for a while, waiting for the medicine to take effect. Only then did he sit up. He said to the worried Little, and I'm fine. Xianyue then took out another spiritual medicine and gave it to him. This is your reward. What reward? This is really too funny. In the future, you must continue to work hard to make this master happy. Thus, Li Qingshan accepted the pill with a pale face. Little N spat out the corpse incineration blood flame and quickly incinerated the giant python demonic beast. This could be considered as revenge for Li Qingshan. The blood flame burned the python until there was nothing left but a snake skeleton. It spun in the air and returned to his mouth. These demonic beasts' blood energy was strong and vigorous. Even 100 people's blood energy couldn't compare to it. It was extremely beneficial to him. Xianyue was stunned. So this is what you eat, Little White. Li Qingshan saw this and thought about how he should help him find some more food. As they went deeper into the boundless mountain range, the trees grew taller. Li Qingshan, who was more than 10 feet tall, often felt small. Along the way, they met more and more demonic beasts. all kinds of creatures that only existed in legends and imagination appeared in front of him. Giant birds with wingspans of more than 10 feet and surrounded by wind and lightning flew across the sky. Spiders the size of tables with ghost faces on their backs weaved a spider web the size of a football field between dozens of towering ancient trees. Chapter 94. At a time like this, Li Qingshan didn't want to cause too much trouble. The demonic beasts that dared to attack Li Qingshan were all shockingly powerful. Xianyue also became more and more cautious. She didn't attack casually and carefully retracted her demonic qi. Li Qingshan often had to go through a bitter battle before he could continue on his journey. As he fought, he became more and more skilled in battle. Against these terrifying demonic beasts, he didn't have many tricks up his sleeves. Most of the time, he had to use brute force against brute force and fight his way through. But he also encountered many demonic beasts that were extremely difficult to deal with. It was all thanks to Little N's blood corpse incineration flame that he performed miraculous feats, burning many demonic beasts to death. He was even more ferocious than Li Qingshan. This divine ability didn't show itself at the start, but the further they went, the more powerful it became. And as more demonic beasts were burned to death, the blood corpse incineration flame also became more and more ferocious. Wherever it went, it was invincible. Even Xianyue kept glancing at it. She didn't know what divine ability or dharma art he cultivated, but it seemed to have a suppressive effect on all living beings with flesh and blood. But Little N couldn't speak, so she couldn't ask him anything. Li Qingshan could only say that he already knew how to use it, and then Little N couldn't reconstruct his fleshly body. It seemed that he needed humans as sacrifices. There was nothing he could do about it. He could only wait until he regained his human form. But along the way, they never encountered a demon general or a demonic beast with a Yao core. It wasn't that Li Qingshan was lucky. Many times, as Li Qingshan was walking forward, Xianyue would suddenly give the order to stop or turn around. And demonic beasts were like wild beasts. They also had their own hunting grounds that ordinary people wouldn't be able to detect. Xianyue could keenly sense the changes and strength of the demonic qi. Then, she would circle around some dangerous areas. Most of the time, she would be moving along the borders of the invisible territory. Meanwhile, Li Qingshan was in charge of controlling the general direction. Along the way, their relationship became much more harmonious. In other words, Li Qingshan's tolerance had become much stronger. As he practiced the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression, he could feel his irritable heart gradually settle down. This was all thanks to the pills and Xuanyue's extremely cute appearance, which greatly increased Li Qingshan's tolerance. Or, in other words, there was nothing he could do even if he did not want to. Of course, what encouraged him to cultivate now was no longer just transforming into a human form, but also the appearance of a certain cat calling him master. According to the theory that a white swan from afar was not as good as braised pork nearby, the idea of marrying Gu Yenying as his wife naturally took a back seat. As for Xianyue, it was not just braised pork. It was a feast for gluttons. Both of them stood before him for him to choose. He really was troubled. He compared it many times in his head, but he failed to come up with an answer. While the frog was still hopping on the ground, it began to struggle over which swan was better. It even considered the 12 ways to eat a swan. As a result, Li Qingshan became filled with hope for the future as he indulged in these lustful thoughts. Before he knew it, many days had passed. On this day, Xianyue suddenly whispered into Li Qingshan's ear, "Stop." Li Qingshan stopped in a hurry, concealing his aura according to the method taught in the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression. A series of heavy footsteps rang out from the distance. A huge lizard that resembled a dinosaur walked past them. She rubbed Li Qingshan's head. If she had been in a hurry, she would have been discovered already. What sword collection palace? That person's coming for you? Li Qingshan sensed an ill omen. This mission was much more dangerous than he had imagined it to be. Xianyue did not hide anything either. She roughly explained the conflict between the Dark Queen and the Bright Queen, which made Li Qingshan's expression even uglier. Even holding the pill made him feel like it was scalding hot. That was an important figure renowned across the entire Green Province. Someone as insignificant as him really would not be able to survive even if he had several lives if he was dragged into a vortex like that. Xianyue encouraged him. Don't be so worried. As long as we escape to the Dragon Province, that old bastard won't be bold enough to chase after us no matter how bold he is. By then, we'll be free to soar through the skies and leap through the oceans. Miowahaha. Li Qingshan was not as optimistic as her, but he was already on the verge of death. No matter how dangerous the path ahead was, he could only take a gamble. He was unable to advance any further. The rat spirit screeched. In the air, the demonic core trembled even more violently. It was in a hurry to withdraw it. Take it. Xianyue casually tossed the demonic core to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan caught it in a hurry. He had never expected the demonic core to be so powerful. Even when he used all his strength, it almost fell out of his hand. The technique of the rat spirit was already so vicious and vicious. If he withdrew the demonic core, he would have nowhere to stand. The spirit turtle suppresses the seas, suppressing evil spirits. Li Qingshan suddenly began to circulate his demon qi madly, firmly suppressing the demonic core in his hand. Seeing how it could not succeed, the rat spirit shrieked and charged over. Its huge body was as fast as lightning, showing no signs of slowing down at all. Chapter 97. Xianyue widened her eyes. How dare you be so rude to me, your master? Her eyes widened even further. Li Qingshan stared at Xianyue. You've never mentioned this before. You're clearly hiding it on purpose. Under his intense gaze, Xianyue panicked for some reason. She changed the topic. Haha, there's a meow. You didn't even ask. Li Qingshan sat down. That's enough. What? Say that again. Xianyue bared her claws and threatened. Li Qingshan said, You're powerful. If you encounter danger, you can teleport away, but we'll most likely die. If you want to kill us, then kill us. I don't want to be used by you anymore. Just let Little N go. Little N grabbed Li Qingshan's sleeve and shook her head desperately. Xianyue said, Do you think I don't dare? She swung her claws as fast as lightning. Li Qingshan definitely could not dodge it. His flesh was not much tougher than the rat demon's either. The claws stopped before Li Qingshan's neck, only inches away. Xuanyue's chest heaved. She turned around and said, Humph, I can't be bothered to kill you. If you want to go, then go. Do as you please. Li Qingshan glanced at her deeply before turning around. He was about to take a step. Xianyue grabbed Li Qingshan's pinky and said softly, The Dragon Province isn't far from here. We agreed on it. Li Qingshan turned around, but she was looking elsewhere. She was not looking at him. The sunlight fell on her eyelashes, casting a shadow over her lake-like eyes. It seemed to reveal a hint of sorrow and weakness which tugged at his heartstrings. After a long silence, Li Qingshan said, All right then, I'll send you off again. I'll just treat it as fulfilling our agreement. Xuanyue's complexion immediately cleared up. She stuck out her tongue and smiled slyly. How easy to coax. She no longer seemed sorrowful or weak at all. Li Qingshan's head fell to the ground. His face immediately darkened. Little and looked at Li Qingshan with some pity. Promise, promise. Xianyue gleefully jumped around Li Qingshan and finally leaped onto his head. She urged, let's go. Li Qingshan glared at her. They continued to move forward. It had been a long time since he walked under the sun. The winter sun was warm and warm. Unknowingly, a long time had passed, and he had completely adapted to this demon body. Xianyue said, don't feel embarrassed. There's nothing embarrassing about losing to my ultimate move. Ultimate move. Xianyue said, actually, I wanted to leave a long time ago, but once the Dark Queen revealed an expression like that, there was nothing I could do. Li Qingshan said, but in the end, you still left. Xianyue said proudly, that's because I'm more ruthless, Miao. Li Qingshan said, this isn't something to brag about. If you are cruel to others, others will also be cruel to you. Is that Miao? In the Black Rat Mountain, the Rat King lay on the ground, completely burying his head in the soil. All the tiny sounds within 5 kilometers, or even 50 kilometers, reached his ears through the soil. Li Qingshan and Xuanyue's conversation obviously did not escape his ears. The innate abilities of demons. Most of them focused on offense and defense, but he knew an extremely rare earth-listening technique which suited his cautious and cowardly nature. He suddenly pulled his head out. His face ashen, he said, as expected, something's wrong. The rats said, wise king. Cut the nonsense, Chase. Xuanyue's ears suddenly perked up. Crap, they're coming, let's go. Li Qingshan took off with his feet and rushed forward madly. With each step, he would leave behind a deep footprint. With his next step, he would travel several dozen meters. Too slow. Xianyue still found it too slow. Li Qingshan said, try carrying me while running. Xianyue took out a spirit herb and threw it into Li Qingshan's mouth, then took out a talisman. The color of the talisman was not the usual yellow, but crimson red. He could not help but feel irritated that he had almost been tricked. Originally, he thought the cat demon would move about carefully alone. He never thought it would have a helper. It was no wonder that he had failed to find it after so many days. The streak of light rapidly drew closer. Suddenly, the cat demon vanished from the smaller demon's shoulder, while the smaller demon ran off towards the east. The soaring dragon elder hesitated. He ignored Li Qingshan and continued towards the ice sword cliff. He had to stop the cat demon from leaving the Green Province. Once it reached the Dragon Province, it would be troublesome. When the sword-like gaze swept past Li Qingshan, he felt like all the blood in his body had stopped flowing. Only when the streak of light shot off towards the north did he ease up. He ran for another 5 kilometers and arrived in a deep valley. He dove in and hid under a cliff, concealing all of his demon chi. He exhaled deeply. He had finally dodged a bullet. Li Qingshan secretly calculated his gains from this trip. He had obtained several dozen pills from Xianyue, and every single one of them was even more effective than the spiritual ginseng, allowing his spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to advance rapidly. Right now, there were still over a dozen pills that he had yet to ingest, so he carefully stored them away in a porcelain bottle. If he ate the remaining pills, he would probably be close to the first layer of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. He would cultivate arduously for a while longer, recover his human form, and return to human society. And he would be able to shake off that wretched cat demon who claimed to be his master. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Li Qingshan rubbed Little An's head with a smile. I'll be able to complete my promise with you very soon. Li Qingshan did not move at all, allowing time to pass by slowly. Suddenly, he felt the ground shake, but it vanished very quickly. Then it shook again. The sky slowly darkened. Dark clouds filled the sky again, and it began to snow heavily. It was accompanied by whistling winds, blanketing the surroundings. Li Qingshan felt even more at ease. In such weather, it would be even more impossible to find him. It would be easier for Xianyue to escape too. When he thought of her, he actually felt rather reluctant to part with her. However, she must have arrived in the Dragon Province already. She would be able to live the free life she wanted very soon. Let's just hope that we're fated to meet again. Myriad Sword Technique. In the snowstorm, a bellow boomed out like a clap of thunder, shattering the snowstorm and interrupting his thoughts. Boundless killing intent enveloped him. Oh no! Li Qingshan leaped up with Little and in his arms. When he looked back in midair, he saw thousands of streaks of light crisscrossing in the snowstorm. They tore apart the cliff he had been hiding in, causing it to collapse with a rumble. Li Qingshan fell onto a dried-up stream. Just as he raised his head, a 3-foot-long sword pointed straight at his forehead. It was only 3 inches away. The soaring dragon elder wielded his sword in his right hand and stood on a rock. He stared at Li Qingshan coldly. Speak, where did that cat demon run off to? You're the soaring dragon swordsman? When Li Qingshan saw the sword immortal's appearance, he was instantly stunned. The portrait in the Dragon's Gate sect's ancestral hall appeared before his eyes again. The Dragon's Gate sect had been around for several generations. It was at least a century old, while the soaring dragon swordsman only seemed slightly older than the portrait. If he considered the fact that the Dragon's Gate sect had purposefully drawn him younger to protect their venerables, then there was basically no change. Apart from the word immortal, there was no other word that could describe him. However, he was currently being pointed at the head by a terrifying immortal. Chapter 99. You recognize me? Soaring Dragon Elder was able to form a golden core, so his mind was incredibly sharp. You were the one behind the Dragon's Gate sect's incident. Elder Divining's words about severing old ties with him happened to refer to this. Li Qingshan cursed his bad luck. He felt that the mysteries of the heavens were unfathomable. There seemed to be a pair of hands controlling everything, karma and retribution. He had destroyed the Dragon's Gate sect, and now he met the founder of the Dragon's Gate sect in such a place and in such a manner. However, when he heard that the soaring dragon elder had failed to find Xianyue, he inexplicably relaxed. At least he had not been wiped out. Therefore, he said, honestly, I was the one behind the Dragon's Gate sect. The Dragon's Gate sect ran amok in the village, doing whatever they wanted. In order to steal my spirit ginseng, they tried to harm me and kill me. I destroyed them. The world is fair. The soaring dragon elder was slightly taken aback. Li Qingshan's eloquence surprised him. He was not as ignorant as ordinary fiendish demons. However, when he heard the end, he raised his eyebrows. There was a flash of sword light, dazzling Li Qingshan's eyes. Only when blood spurted from his shoulder did he realize that he had been injured by the sword. It left a terrifying wound that stretched from his shoulder to his chest. A mere fiendish demon dares claim to be fair. A spiritual item is not something a fiendish demon like you deserves to possess. Slaying fiendish demons is the way of justice. Little and spewed out the blood corpse incineration flame, but before it could reach a meter away from the soaring dragon elder, it was forced back by the spiritual energy. The soaring dragon elder glanced at him. What a pity! You have a good physique, but you have fallen to the demonic path. I will send you to hell. Then he said coldly to Li Qingshan, cut the crap. Tell me where the cat demon went, and I'll give you a quick death. I'll let you reincarnate. Don't be a demon in your next life. Otherwise, I will destroy your soul. He headed north in pursuit. However, he had lost Xuanyue's aura. He used the myriad sword art to shatter dozens of mountains and wreaked havoc in the boundless mountains. However, aside from demon commanders, who could stop him? In the end, he failed to force her out. Xuanyue's two mystical abilities were too suitable for concealment. The soaring dragon elder was in a terrible mood. Since Elder Destiny said that this trip would be a success for sure, he might even be able to fulfill his destiny. Most likely, it was going to happen to this little demon. Li Qingshan said, "I don't know." Before his voice died away, blood spurted from his right shoulder. He lowered his head, clenched his fists, and crushed a handful of pebbles. Fiendish demons are all heartless. You're just a pawn and abandoned after being used. It's a waste of time for me to interrogate you. The soaring dragon elder's face was filled with pity and mockery. The sword light exploded, and with a horizontal slash, it slashed towards Li Qingshan's neck. However, Li Qingshan still didn't have the time to react. Even if he had 1,000 tricks up his sleeves, he couldn't use any of them. There was no continuous chatter. His moves were clean and precise, showing no mercy. This was what a sword immortal was like. A beam of silver light descended from the sky and shot towards the soaring dragon elder's head. The light was so serene and divine. Li Qingshan felt like he was hallucinating. It was as if a crack had opened in the dark clouds in the sky, allowing the moonlight to shine through. However, it was just a hallucination. The dark clouds remained as thick as ever, and the snow fell even more violently. Instead, a smile of joy appeared on the soaring dragon elder's face. He abandoned Li Qingshan and twisted his wrist. The light from his sword rushed into the sky. It collided with the silver light, but the sharp light shattered the serene light. It shot straight down, leaving behind a crescent-shaped hole in the ground. The soaring dragon elder fled with the light, and Li Qingshan raised his head. At the top of the valley, within the endless wind and snow, was a rather small figure. The silver light shone from the crescent moon on her forehead. Meow! Ha ha ha! A familiar laughter pierced through the wind and snow, reaching his heart. Immediately, something indescribable surged through Li Qingshan's chest. However, he said, "Idiot, why did you come back? Go to your dragon province." Xianyue said, "Don't talk to your masters, Meow." Li Qingshan said, "I've said it before. You're not my master." Xianyue said, "I clearly heard you calling for master to save me earlier." "I didn't." Xianyue laughed aloud. "I probably misheard you. Otherwise, you must have called for help inside." Li Qingshan was stunned. Yes, he was calling for help inside, asking for help from someone, but not from this cat demon, as even if she came, it would be useless. "Cat demon, you refuse to take the path to heaven." The soaring dragon elder's voice rang out from the sky. Xianyue stuck out her tongue at the soaring dragon elder. She lifted her eyelids and made a face at him. "Damned old man, come after me." With a turn of her body, she vanished. The cliff she stood on had already been torn to pieces by the light, and her demon chi vanished once more. The soaring dragon elder said, "One sword into 10,000, 10,000 swords rain." The sword in his hand multiplied into 2, then into 3, and in the end it turned into thousands of swords that filled the sky. Swish, swish, swish. Countless flashes of light descended from the sky like a storm, enveloping the entire valley. This was a terrifying immortal's punishment. Before such a terrifying move, demons were like pigs and dogs, while mortals were like ants. All tricks were useless, and all schemes were futile. Li Qingshan raised his head and gazed at the flashes of light that flickered like stars. It was unstoppable. There was only death. The rain of swords pierced through and shattered everything, but Li Qingshan did not die. A petite figure moved and blocked his way. The crescent moon on her forehead shone with silver light, blocking the rain of swords. Within the howling blizzard, the silver light and the rain of swords collided violently, illuminating the gloomy valley like it was daytime. The soaring dragon elder said, "This must be a life-saving move that the Dark Queen, that wretched woman, left for you. I'd like to see how long you can last." He formed a seal with his hand and pointed down. The rain of swords seemed endless. The silver light retreated inch by inch, but Xianwei gritted her teeth and endured. Li Qingshan looked at the petite figure and called out, "Go! Hide! It's useless like this." Xianwei said, "Shut up! How can a master not protect his pet?" "Who treats you as a master?" "Meow, I'm not discussing this with you." In the blink of an eye, the silver light was pressed to a foot before him, about to shatter. Even higher up in the sky, a huge white dragon over 300 meters long twisted its body as it descended from above with a furious roar. At a closer glance, he discovered that it was not a dragon, but a tornado. It tore apart the snow and hurtled towards the soaring dragon elder. On the other side of the tornado, the jade folding fan in Gu Yeniying's hand had already been completely unfurled, shining with resplendent light. "Soaring dragon elder, stop!" The soaring dragon elder made up his mind and completely ignored the tornado behind him. He formed a seal with his hand, and the rain of swords retracted, rapidly condensing together. It shone with dazzling light, vaguely shaped like a ball. It was like an extremely dazzling star, lighting up in the pitch-black sky. Myriad swords returned to one, meteor falls. Gu Yenying said, "Be careful." However, her voice was unable to match the speed at which the huge sword fell. Chapter 100. Li Qingshan caught her in his arms. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. This article came from the tornado roared angrily and slammed into the soaring dragon elder's body, smashing him into the ground and pressing him down tightly. It spun rapidly like a drill bit as it drilled downwards. The sturdy frozen ground was destroyed and shattered, dust flying everywhere. The tornado turned from a white dragon of snow to a black dragon of earth. In the mountain valley, large rocks rolled and sand flew everywhere. Gu Yeniying's expression was dark. She had immediately rushed over after receiving the news from the Rat King of Black Rat Mountain, but she had not expected to be one step too late. Her gaze was fixed on the ground where the tornado had drilled. "Take her away." A Golden Core expert was not so easily killed. She had enough confidence in a one-on-one battle and would not be at a disadvantage. However, it was almost impossible to protect the two of them. Light shot out of the deep hole the tornado had drilled. Dozens of sword lights instantly tore the tornado to pieces. The soaring dragon elder rose into the air, his body enveloped in a spherical protective light. "Gu Yenying, you can't stop me." A thread of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. It looked like he had not been well taken after taking that attack head-on. However, the will in his eyes was as indestructible as a tempered divine weapon. "Don't brag." Gu Yenying was truly angered. 100 dragons dancing in the heavens. With a wave of her jade folding fan, 100 tornadoes rampaged and attacked the soaring dragon elder from different directions and angles. Everything that stood in the way of the tornadoes was torn to pieces. Deep ravines were left on the ground and mountain walls. Large trees that would require several people to wrap their arms around were uprooted and sucked into the tornadoes. They were torn to pieces. In that moment, there was a wild dance of slaughter. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. It was like the end of the world. The soaring dragon elder's expression became more and more determined. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat a mouthful of blood onto the soaring dragon sword. The master of the Black Wind stronghold, Xiong Xiangu, could use his blood to activate spirit talismans with the body of a mortal and unleash power that far surpassed his own strength. Just what kind of terrifying move would a Golden Core expert unleash if he used this move? The sword was stained with blood. It immediately began to twist like a living creature. In the dazzling light, it transformed into a golden dragon that was more than 30 meters long. However, it did not look like a dragon. Instead, it was a real dragon with scales and claws. It shook its head and swayed its tail as it clashed with the tornadoes. Unexpectedly, it was able to fight against 100 people alone, and it was not at a disadvantage at all. Gu Yenying was shocked. For a Golden Core expert, it wasn't as simple as a mortal spitting out blood. Instead, it would damage one's own cultivation, so they wouldn't easily use it. The golden dragon destroyed the tornadoes one by one. Its own spiritual light also gradually dimmed. The flying dragon elder took out a magic talisman from the Sumeru ring on his finger and said, "Elder Destiny has calculated that there will be some obstacles on this trip." Purple amulet. Gu Yenying's expression became even more solemn. In the Tao of talismans, yellow talismans were the lowest, red talismans were the middle, and purple talismans were the highest. The difference in power between them was like heaven and earth. Purple talismans could only be made by nascent soul cultivators, and they were single-use items. It was extremely rare even for a Golden Core cultivator. It was only used as a life-saving talisman, yet he was willing to take it out. The ice sword cliff was truly like a huge sword, severing all of his hopes. I refuse to accept this. The spirit turtle's method of sea suppression circulated madly in his body. Almost miraculously, his feet actually recovered, although they were much larger than regular feet, and his nails were sharp. They were actually a pair of feet, not hooves. Originally, he could only recover his human form after reaching the first layer, but he forcefully recovered his feet with a thought in his mind. Xianyue said in surprise, "How impressive!" However, Li Qingshan could not be bothered with joy. He leapt onto the ice cliff. "Let's go." In the snowstorm, Li Qingshan climbed up step by step with Xianyue on his back. His claws dug deeply into the ice. The coldness constantly seeped into his skin, freezing his bones. He could not see the sky, nor could he see the ground. It was as if the two of them were the only people left in the world, working arduously. What's so good about the Dragon Province? Is the nine-tailed fox empress beautiful? Is she even more beautiful than the Dark Queen? Li Qingshan rambled on. Originally, he constantly told Xianyue to shut up, but now he actually chattered away endlessly. This was because he had to do everything he could to remain clear-headed, to prevent the coldness from stealing his mind, to prevent despair from crushing him. This was because Xuanyue's body gradually grew colder, and she gradually fell silent. She closed her eyes and leaned against Li Qingshan's back. She answered half-heartedly, "Of course she's beautiful. Perhaps because her voice was too weak, it was swallowed by the wind." "Hold on. I'll definitely take you. I'll take you to the Dragon Province." Li Qingshan said constantly, "You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.